is, in all your research and all your reading and all your experiences, have you been able to reconcile the fact that the same men who respect their mothers, their sisters, and protect their children, when they go out, are totally different, 100%, don't have respect for any other women? It's like if I'm waiting for a lift in an office building, I'm standing there waiting to go in. They come out, it's like I don't exist. Some of them push me, I got this side. If I'm waiting to go in, they go on either side of me like I'm a rock in the water and they have to swim around me. So it's like sometimes I say, hello, I'm standing here waiting to go into the lift. But to me, the feeling I get, which I've become insensitive to, is who are you? We go first, you're a nothing. Now, they would not say this to their parents at home, and they would not say to their mother or their sister or their daughter. Why are they saying it to women they don't know? Have you come across some correlation or reconciliation on this?
Well, in India, this is a dichotomy because we also have women goddesses in India. Yeah. And the thing is, there's this thing about your women, with whom, frankly, given the incidence of domestic violence, I don't think there's any respect, particularly for the wife, within the house. Yeah, you didn't mention wife. Good, yeah. So I think it is that attitude that these are my women, so I can treat them as I wish. But these are other women, and I can do whatever I want with them, So this is a very deeply embedded belief, of within our society, and it's a male belief, and this attitude you talk about, behavior, it's exactly what I'm saying. This male entitlement. I mean, many of us who are professional women, I'm sure many of you have experienced this, that you're in a discussion, and people are just talking all around you. If you're the only woman, and you have to literally raise your voice and your hand to be heard. I'm on the managing committee of our building where I live in Bombay, and often I have to thump the table to get those guys to just shut up and listen, and it's so vexing that you still have to do this, but it's like you're not there until you scream, and then they'll say, why are you being hysterical? So this is reality. So I think it's part of the larger thing, about the pariah woman, the one who's out there, she's available. And it's still an old belief that somehow if you're out in the public space and you're not, closeted at home, then you are a free woman, I mean, those of us who drink or smoke, we've had this all the time, if you're, she drinks, she smokes, therefore she must be also promiscuous, therefore she must be available. I mean, this is just such an old thing that goes on in our society.
I'm just curious, can you recommend your suggestion how we can impress upon our youngsters to start with our families, and whether they're boys or girls, how can we change? Otherwise, we are doomed, in my humble opinion. I think we must have the change.
Yeah.
Outside we say we are a very civilized society with an old culture where men and women are equal. We go on presenting outside in the world that every Indian god has an Indian goddess and they have equal rights. And what I have heard and read, it is true. But what the hell is happening to India, the way you describe, I get very pessimistic. So give me some advice so I can become more optimist.
Yeah, thank you. But, I think there's a lot on the downside, but I am also an optimist. And I do believe that things are changing and could change if more of us are involved in wanting to do that change. So the first thing, of course, is, as I said, talking to boys and the way we bring up our children. So I'm very encouraged, for instance, my neighbors who are both professionals have 2 kids, a boy and a girl. The boy played football from, as soon as he could kick a ball, he wanted to play football. And within a couple of years, the girl said, I want to play football. And they said, of course you will. So she also goes for football. So that I love that, that shift has taken place. I love the fact that now in India, the leading sports people are women. Mary Kom, the Indian women's cricket team is doing very well. There's an Indian women's rugby team. Women are doing all kind of sport, which, even 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we would not have seen. As I said, even these current political movements like this Anti-Citizenship Amendment Act is being led by women students who actually started off fighting against the curfew. In these hostels, there's a time limit for girls to come back and boys can stay out as late as they want because, of course, everything is unsafe, so you're told girls should come back. They said, why should you? Make it safe and allow us to stay late also. But these very girls have now progressed to fighting on these larger issues. And they are in the forefront of fighting on this Citizenship Amendment Act. In fact, through social media, I saw this wonderful little video clip where a group of students from Jamia, which was, the center of the whole opposition on December 15th, they took out a march towards the RSS headquarters. So they were walking towards it, and the police come and stop them. So one police officer comes up to these girls and says, you can't go further because of Section 144, etc. Instead of arguing with him, they start singing a song. And the song is about how they're going to end Hindu patriarchy. And he's completely disarmed because he doesn't know what to do, because these girls are not fighting with him, but they're just singing away. And they're finding innovative ways of doing it. So to me, this is all very encouraging because, every generation has to find its own way of doing it and building its allies. Some years ago, there was an attack on a pub in Mangalore because there were boys and girls sitting there having a drink, and this very extreme group called the Sri Ram Sene, they went and beat up the boys and also some of the girls. So a young woman in Bangalore started what she called the Pink Chaddi campaign. So, chaddi or nikka is the sort of pejorative name given to members of the RSS because they wear these shorts, and pink being the sort of feminine color. So she got people to send in pink chaddis, and they got 2,500 of them, which was sent in a parcel to the head of the Sri Ram Sene. After that, it never happened again. So I am very hopeful of these kind of innovative ways in which the new generation is finding ways to, tackle the same thing that we may have done with morchas and, advocacy. I think both have to go together. I think we still have to do the getting out on the street. But it's wonderful that an entirely new generation, as I said, some of them don't even know. One person called me, and when I said, have you heard the name Mathura? And she said, no. I said, she's a tribal girl who was raped in 1972. And because of her, that whole campaign to change the rape laws began at the end of the 70s. But, but she was a feminist, this young woman, wanted to be part of something, but she had not heard about it. So that's fine. They should learn, but they should also find their own ways. And I feel people are finding. So I don't feel we are a deadened society that has just sat back and accepted that what is happening is going to go on happening. I think people are fighting, and more people need to. And we have these democratic spaces, luckily, still, with the digital platforms that allow for expression of, things that mainstream media is not doing. And social media, which has a downside also with all the fake news, but it also allows for much of this kind of news that is not, again, in mainstream media to be conveyed to people, that they get to know now that so many protests are taking place, so much innovation is happening. Yeah, and I'm always encouraged. I have made it like my life mission now to talk to young people, and I love the fact that they're so aware and so conscious and wanting to fight and wanting to change. It's wonderful.
You haven't tackled any of the violence in elite homes, where those children go out, and I know there was a big hoo-ha in Bombay where these children were talking about violence against their schoolmates. I don't know if you know about it.
Sorry, against?
Their
A bunch of
schoolmates.
schoolmates, yes.
Yeah.
There were a bunch of kids who put out dirty WhatsApps or whatever that was. But the violence I'm myself witnessing, and I live in Kerala, 49% of domestic violence is in the households, within intimate husband and wife. And it just, a lot of it starts there, because the boy who witnesses his mother being beaten is very, very likely to go on to beat his wife because of the lack of respect given to his mother. And so, that kind of thing is I know it's prevalent in my building alone. I know 3 families women who've come to me because I'm an outsider. I'm an outsider, and they know I won't do kit-pit with the other churchgoers and all that in the building.
Yeah.
So they come and they confess to me that they're being beaten by their husbands. One's a Christian, one's a Muslim, one's a Hindu woman. They're all 3. And I mean, we've talked about it, and one woman, I got her to the lawyer's office to ask for a divorce. He showed up and she quit right then and there. So it's extremely difficult. And we're talking about rape. All 3 women have been raped, they've been beaten, and their children have witnessed it. So this on a level where these kids go to fancy schools, who's doing anything for that? Because they're future leaders, future doctors, future whatever,
In my second chapter, I've called it The Silence of the Tomb. And that is specifically on precisely what you're saying, though I have not talked only about the elite, I've talked in general about it and given some instances. So it is a very big issue. And I was in Kerala recently, and Mathrubhumi had done a 7-part series on domestic violence and marital rape. And as you know, that when the Domestic Violence Act was brought in, they wanted marital rape to be included, the women who had helped to draft it, but the government just knocked it out. In the parliament, they said, oh, this will threaten the Indian family. Similarly, in 2013, after the 2012 gang rape, when the Justice Verma Committee was set up to look at all the laws to do with violence against women, they also looked at the Domestic Violence Act, and they once again said that we have to recognize marital rape as something. And once again, the government just cherry-picked and forgot about that one, and they took in some of the other suggestion. Because it goes to the core of, what is happening behind closed doors and the so-called safe places. And so in that chapter, I've talked about both that and also about shelter homes. That's the other thing, that children who are rescued from violent homes go into these shelter homes, which they experience even more violence there. And there's been this horrendous case in Bihar, which the Tata Institute of Social Sciences went there to do a study and found that so many of these girls had been raped by the guy who was running that shelter home. So it is frightening. And that is the silence. And that's why I called it The Silence and the Storm, because there's a storm about the public incidents of violence that come to our attention, but there's complete silence about both child sexual abuse and domestic violence. There's very, very little of it that's coming out. And even, you're right, whereas poor homes, still the women will come out because they live in communities where, you can't hide it. In the elite homes, it just is covered up. There's nothing. It doesn't come out. And the other surprising thing is that the percentage of divorce in India is only 1%. Which again speaks to the fact that, the majority of Indian married women just accept that that's their fate, whatever is happening within their homes, and not even the ones who are empowered, so to speak, who have the ability to have economic independence, they have professionals, they could step out, but they just don't have that confidence still in all these years to do it. Yeah.